Hi sunshines, welcome to chapter 23, Ecology. We're just going to briefly skim the topic of ecology and hit some key terms. We'll look at the parts of ecosystems, we'll look at a little bit on energy flow, and then we'll hit biodiversity and the threats to it. Yay! Okay, so what is ecology? It is the study of our whole systems, including the abiotic and biotic factors. So biotic, bio means life, so these are the living things. And abiotic. Those are the non-living. So ecology is a very broad branch. You can be looking at, different plants, animals, fungus, bacteria. The biotic things are the abiotic factors, like the nutrients. They're nitrogen, phosphorus, carbon. You can be looking at gas levels, oxygen, carbon dioxide. You can be looking at sunlight levels, temperature, water, precipitation. All of those fall under ecology. There's a lot of different branches. Okay, so let's start big picture terminology down to more specific. The biosphere basically is Earth. It's all the living things on Earth, all the area where you can have life, the abiotic and biotic factors there. And then an ecosystem is one of those specific areas of biotic and abiotic factors. Usually ecosystems are named for either precipitation, some sort of defining characteristic, like a rainforest, a temperate rainforest, a desert. You can have things named for oftentimes like different forests based on the type of trees that are most common there, the plant species. South Africa has some really fun ones with different plants like fynbos. Cool. And then within the ecosystem, all the living things is the community there. And then population, you've got a single species, all the individuals of that species in an area interbreeding, intermixing. Interacting. Ooh, that wasn't super pretty. So, biosphere is the whole Earth, and ecosystem is all the abiotic and biotic factors in an area on Earth. The community is the living factors. A population is a group of the same species that interact, so we've got like our impala here. And you could go down to organism. And then if we wanted to go smaller, we could go organ systems, organs. Hey, you know where this is going. Tissues. Cells. Oh, we've been there. So now we're looking bigger picture. Okay, so an important part of ecology is the energy flow. We are not a closed system on Earth. We get our energy from the sun, and producers take that light energy and they convert it into chemical energy. Light energy into chemical energy, into sugar. So it's almost exactly the reverse of cellular respiration. You need carbon dioxide, you need water, and through processes using light energy, you'll make glucose and oxygen. Isn't that fun? Fun fact, the reason that photosynthetic organisms are usually green is because green energy isn't really good at doing this process. So they absorb the red and the blue light, use that, reflect off the green. Okay. And then from producers on, we have different trophic levels, or like basically levels of the food web. With those producers first, and then primary consumers, the herbivores, the ones who eat the plants. or photosynthetic bacteria, algae. Secondary are ones that feed on the primary, and then tertiary feed on secondary. So there is some interesting ideas here that can really relate to humans as well. The further you go up in trophic levels, the less of each individual species you're going to have. You're going to have mostly producers, and then primary, 10 times less, secondary at least, and 10 times less, tertiary. So let's look at how that works. So here we've got our biomass, and so the biggest thing, like I was saying, is the producers, and then each level you go up, you have less. That's because for all that you eat, only about 10% goes into growth, goes into biomass. So using that energy, you would need 10 times as much of each of the lower levels to get one piece of the next level up. And so this is showing in the chicken. They're eating the food. They're herbivores, so they're eating like seeds or something. And where that energy is going. You lose lots of heat. You go into excretion, defecation, growth and reproduction, and used as energy for species that eat them. Right? And about 10% goes to growth and reproduction. So let's apply that to humans. Two things here. More humans could be nourished on a vegetarian diet than a diet containing meat, because overall you've got those, if you're a level lower on the trophic system, you're getting energy directly. You're not going that 10% up, right? So you're getting 100% rather than 10%. They've done studies on this, and there are some areas that aren't really great for plant growth that you can use for herbivore domestication, agriculture. So some areas we could use meat where we couldn't really use plants, but overall, the lower levels you're eating on the food system, the trophic levels, the more ecologically sustainable it is. Okay? Another interesting idea is this first point: the non-degradable substances accumulate. This is called biomagnification. So let's look at this next slide to really understand what biomagnification is. Okay, so here in this picture we've got mercury, and it's showing the levels going up those trophic levels. So the phytoplankton, they are producers, they're making their own energy. They just have a little bit of mercury, whereas anything that eats them eats 10 times the amount of them as they get biomass, so they have 10 times as much mercury. And then fish that eat those zooplankton, 10 times as much as that. And then the tuna that eats those, 10 times as much as that. So each level you're multiplying basically the amount of mercury. So when you're eating like fish species, you don't want to eat the top consumers if you're in an area with lots of mercury, because they're going to have the highest levels. That makes sense. And if you're going to eat farm-raised fish, it makes the most sense to eat those smaller, earlier food levels too, because they take less energy to grow because they're eating plants. Okay. Pretty interesting. Okay. So mass extinctions. This is where you lose 50+% of species. You'll have these huge losses in biodiversity. Biodiversity is the diversity of life, different types of species, genetic diversity, ecosystem diversity. So there have been 5 mass extinctions so far. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But what's really interesting is you'll notice that after you have that drop, rapid speciation occurs. And by rapid, I mean this is hundreds of millions of years. So in what? 20 million years you've had a lot of speciation. And then we think that we are in the 6th extinction now, based on human problems. We're the first time that we've caused mass extinctions is occurring now. Elizabeth Colbert does a really good book on this called The 6th Extinction. I recommend checking it out. So now let's look at the causes for loss of biodiversity. So in my conservation biology class, we talk about this forever. This man here is E.O. Wilson. He is a professor who studied ants. And he came up with the term hippo and changed it to HIPCO. And these are all the reasons that we lose biodiversity. First, habitat loss or degradation. 2, invasive or alien species. These are species that are non-native and were brought in by humans into an area. We've got lots of invasives around here. Minnesota's really good about dealing with them though. We've got like milfoil in the lakes, zebra mussels, and they all negatively affect native species. So like zebra mussels will use a lot of the nutrients from the water, but they don't pass a lot along when they get eaten. They take the nutrients from the native mussel species as well. Others, we've got starlings are a big one. Those blackbirds that go in groups, oftentimes are starlings. They're pretty, but they're European. They don't belong here. We release them on purpose to celebrate. Terrible idea. Okay, and then one of the P's is population of humans. We're going to look at this more in the next chapter. But in general, higher levels of populations of humans means that we have more resources that we need, and we'll see native species decrease. Right. The next P is pollution. You can have what we think of as pollution like air pollution, water pollution. You can also have things like noise pollution and light pollution, where species won't live near roads where they might be good habitat, but they're scared of the noise that they hear there. It could affect species that communicate via sound. They might not be able to hear each other well anymore. That's true oftentimes of aquatic cetaceans like whales. And then light pollution can affect like geese that migrate based on the stars. A famous one is sea turtles will have this positive phototaxis when they're born. They'll go towards light. And generally the brightest thing will be the reflection of the moon on water. But if you have lots of lights on the other direction, they'll go the wrong way. The C in HIPCO is the most recent addition. That is climate change. Already severe effects due to climate change. We could see more issues with like pollinators not being out when trees are flowering, snowshoe hares not changing to brown in time and getting eaten because they stand out in white when there's no snow. And then the last O is overexploitation. So overexploitation is taking species at a rate that is higher than it can replenish itself. So you'll see the population drop. So in some areas we forest really sustainably, and we'll plant trees back and they'll grow, and we'll have species of those trees at each age and area. But other times people will take way more, they won't replenish, and then you won't have those trees anymore. And that would be unsustainable. The pet trade is a huge area of unsustainable overexploitation. We're seeing lots of species drop in population due to that, nearing extinction. An example of rhinos being shot for their horns. And it's important that we don't lose this biodiversity because, A, in itself it's important that these species are present and we don't want to negatively affect them, but we don't know the applications of different plants and organisms to new medications. They found interesting things in wasps that could help us. These organisms are important to those functioning biogeochemical cycles. Without roots and trees, you'll have more erosion, which can cause problems for us. We'll have, salt marshes that help protect land from damage during storms. Biodiversity is great. Okay, have a great day.